Welcome to the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow retro pop culture loving babies. And if you ever had your hair teased out like you were in a Poison or a Bon Jovi video, but you were wearing a Run DMC tracksuit at the same time, well, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, everybody. This is Wolfman Mike on the mic, and I can talk 70s and 80s all night. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host with the most. It's Spunky Comstock himself. He's pretty fly for a Bry guy. He's no fries on the side guy. It's Brian. And in case you can't remember what Brian sounds like, he sounds a little something like this.
My superpower is that I can listen to jam band music without having to get high.
And you guessed it, guys. Today's the kind of shows I love. It's all music. And today's show is about, so you think you hate disco. So you think you hate Outlaw Country. So you think you hate 80s rap. So you think you hate Metallica, blah, blah, blah. All these genres and groups that we like to make fun of, but they have great songs. And today you are going to get a great song that you never knew before. You're going to get a song that you totally forgot about. And you're probably going to get a couple songs that piss you off too. But that's all right. And you don't have to write any of them down because we're putting them all on a playlist on the show notes. So you can go listen to them, the one that you love, and you can listen to them in full later. So we got a lot of show to get to. So let's get to it. Well, sounds like a little beatbox in there by me, huh?
Shot of cocaine and I shot my woman down. I went right home and I went to bed. I stuck at 1144 beneath my head. Got up next morning and I grabbed that gun. Took a shot of cocaine and away I run. Made a good run, but I run too slow. They overtook me down in Juarez, Mexico.
Hey, Mike on the mic, Wolfman Mike. I've been doing a little bit of thinking recently. We got some, younger podcast listeners that when we talk about this music from the 70s and 80s, they're kind of like, why should I go back and listen to it? And I'm like, well, maybe we should kind of give a little bit of depth and introduction to some of these songs or genres that we listen to. And I kind of want to get your feeling on that.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking today. We'll do this. So that's why. So you think you hate disco, so you think you hate outlaw country, so you think you hate 80s rap, or so you think you hate southern rock. There's a lot of music we turn our noses up at, and I think me and you, Brian, we have pretty broad taste, but I think there's even a couple segments where we turn our nose up and we don't listen to them. You got to realize there's great music in every genre, and a lot of groups you don't like even have great music. So I was thinking we could just kind of dive into something we like today and see what we can find.
Oh, Mike, you are so correct. Even us well-rounded, cultured individuals do turn our noses up at certain genres. At least I do.
and so this brings me to my first one, Brian. When this one music genre has the word sucks attached to it, can you imagine which one I'm talking about? Nobody says bluegrass sucks. Nobody says yeah.
Nope.
I mean, some people say rock sucks, I guess, but
it got to the point in the 70s. Didn't the Chicago White Sox have everyone bring their albums to the stadium so they could destroy them that night? And they called it this genre demolition night.
Yeah, they had Disco Sucks Night, and they did a bonfire with disco albums.
First segment. So you think disco sucks?
And I can see it. The 70s had this great guitar-driven rock, and then they come out with the early synth-driven rock here with the dance music, pop music always gets kind of joked about the most anyways. But there was some great groups, and I think Staying Alive is one of the greatest songs ever by the Bee Gees. I know you're not a Bee Gees guy, but they had a little album, you might have heard of it, called the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack in 1977. And it was like the biggest album, and it was the biggest soundtrack forever. And then I think finally it got beat by Michael Jackson's Thriller for album. And then Oh Brother, We're Out Thou finally beat it for soundtracks like 30 years later. So I was thinking, I could play Staying Alive. Everybody knows that song. That might be the greatest disco song ever, but I wanted to pick another song by the Bee Gees off the same album. So I picked this one, and I think this one's a little more than a disco song. I think it's got a little more. I could have picked How Deep Is Your Love? How Deep Is Your Love? But I think that's just kind of a soft rock song. I don't even know if that's really a disco song. So I picked More Than a Woman. So we got the falsetto here.
Did we say that this was the Bee Gees' foray into yacht rock?
See, I think there's a little more here than disco. I think it goes a little deeper than that. Maybe I'm wrong.
It could be the way they're presenting the lyrics. I mean, they got the underlying dance tracks, right? That's kind of that disco became known as that. It's that certain beat.
Yeah.
It's the John Travolta walking down the street beat, for lack of a better phrase.
I think that's what they call it, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, disco, it got this bad rap, disco sucks. Everybody said disco sucks. And I get it. I like 70s rock. I like eating steak, but I don't think they should close down all the Burger Kings, just because, well, maybe Burger King, maybe, but not Wendy's or McDonald's, But, when we just recently talked about I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. That's a disco song. I think that's an excellent song. Donna Summer has a bunch of great stuff. I think it's just fun music.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's not like classic rock. It doesn't have to be classic rock. I think it's just something, like you say, when you want to boogie walking down the street carrying cans of paint like John Travolta, you can put on I Will Survive.
Well, and part of the backlash, when something gets hated, widespread like that, it is because it was good enough to become so popular in the first place.
Yeah, and it did get overplayed. I think that's kind of.
Then it gets overplayed, right?
Yeah, it might have been a victim of its own success there.
Although I guess there's something to be said as you're waiting in the proctologist's office and the song "Staying Alive" comes on, or if you're in the ER waiting room and your loved one is touch and go and "Staying Alive" comes on. I guess there's something to be said for that.
Well, at my job at the casino, it's like whenever I'm in a hurry to walk all the way across the entire casino, it always comes on the loudspeaker, and then I got to do the John Travolta strut. So,
yep, that's like if you're 5 minutes late to work, you want like "Jumping Jack Flash" by the Rolling Stones to come on the radio.
So that's my first thing. I think everybody should give disco another shot. It's fun to make fun of, and I get that, but I think there's some great songs out there.
So you think you hate Outlaw Country?
We've talked a lot of Outlaw Country on here without really delving into it. We kind of went with Willie Nelson's Redheaded Stranger, but that's not so much Outlaw Country as far as the musicality of it, as opposed to how it got produced with, standing up for what you believe in as a musician, pushing for your editorial control of the music. So Outlaw Country was more than just, we're bad guys, we're drinking beer and we're robbing banks and stuff like that, or we're living outside of the law. More of, I'm going to go against what the mainstream's telling me to do and do what I want to. Kind of then the difference of the disco taking over and everyone's jumping on the disco train. Outlaw Country was more, hey, there's people out there that kind of march to the beat of a different drum, and we're going to play to them. Back in our went to the Field of Dreams. We saw Bob Mould and went on an epic road trip. As epic as two guys in their 50s can do. And my theory that came out of that road trip as we were standing at the Buddy Holly crash site was that day was the day that Outlaw Country was born. Waylon Jennings, and Tommy Alsop got shafted by the tour producer. The tour producer had told them that they would fly them commercially to Buddy Holly's funeral if they finished up the tour for him, and they didn't. So then Waylon Jennings got that bad taste in his mouth about like the powers that be in the music industry, and kind of then went against the mainstream and started putting out albums. The song that maybe, to me, kind of kicks it off from the Honky Tonk Heroes album. So that's the guys that hang out in the honky tonks and are living it up after they get their paycheck, and the best use of the money is to go, drink and, raise hell in a honky tonk, is the song Honky Tonk Heroes. It's one of those, it starts out kind of, it's like telling a story, and then it kicks into a driving Waylon Jennings type song. Yeah, this is when it's like kicked in from he's just telling the story, and then it's got that driving Waylon beat.
Yeah, it does have that driving, like a train coming down the tracks.
Exactly. Yep. You're picking rocks, or you're busting rocks on the side of the road in a chain gang. This is the beat that you're going to be slamming down the pick on Breaking the Rock. And then Waylon get that, kind of, he's got a nice, good voice, but then he gets that little bit, he's like singing with a sneer. And then this will bridge into a later thing, but I recently read that Dickie Betts, a guitarist famous for being in the Allman Brothers, really his two guitar influences after he got out of the classical, like Django Reinhardt, stuff like that, were Jerry Garcia and Waylon Jennings. And I thought, Waylon Jennings? And it's like, oh no, Waylon Jennings was 5, 6, 7 years older than Dickie Betts, and would have been when he was with the Buddy Holly, and then when he kind of went out on his own, like more country, but punched up country guitar. So it's like kind of the outlaw country, kind of, then you can lead into maybe a little country rock stuff. And there's just these great songs because they're not doing it mainstream. It's not mainstream country. If you hate mainstream country, hey, I'm on board with you there. That's where you go into the Outlaws. With outlaw country, though, we can't talk about outlaw country kind of outside of the mainstream country that's trying to speak to the people as opposed to just trying to sell records, without talking about Johnny Cash and Johnny Cash recording in prisons. And with that captive audience in more ways than one, and their energy that they bring to the show when he's playing. When we were kids, when I was a kid, we pretended to be DJs. My parents had a nice record collection, but then by then things had gone to 8-tracks and cassette tapes. And we had an old record player, and we pretend we were doing DJs down in our basement, and we'd play songs. And one of the albums my dad had bought was Johnny Cash at San Quentin. Probably most famous for launching the song Boy Named Sue. But the song that really spoke to me as a kid, and these are these songs now, part of Mike and I bringing this music to the younger generations, is these songs that we're talking about today probably weren't played on the radio because they were deeper tracks in an album. So they're obscure, but they're still fantastic music.
That's going to be another theme for today's show. Like the Bee Gees song More Than a Woman wasn't even a charting single. So yeah, that's going to be another reoccurring theme with a lot of our songs today are going to be songs that weren't really commercial viable.
So when Johnny Cash is in at San Quentin and he realizes his guitar's out of tune, so he has this pattern. He tells a story about they've been recording in prisons. They've been, this is their third time at San Quentin. They had famously been at Folsom Prison. And then he says Starkville City Jail, and it gets a laugh. And the story is after a show, he's telling this pattern while his guitar is being tuned because he's having trouble tuning it himself. So he's just talking with the prisoners about this time where he was after a show. He's walking to get cigarettes in Starksville, Mississippi, and it's a nice southern night, nice warm breeze, warm southern breeze, and he's in a good mood. He picks a flower or two, and then these cars roll up and they get out and they detain him for breaking their curfew, and they charge him $36, and he spends a night in jail. So he makes a song for it. And so we can't talk about outlaws without talking about being in jail. And I think Johnny Cash's Starkville County Jail, if you haven't ever heard it, you need to.
Well, I left my motel room down at the Starkville Motel. The town had gone to sleep and I was feeling fairly well. I strolled along the sidewalk neath the sweet magnolia trees. I was whistling, picking flowers, swaying in the southern breeze. I found myself surrounded. One policeman said, "That's him. Come along, wildflower child, don't you know that it's 2 a.m.?"
So as a kid,
'cause he got a
That wildflower
curfew.
child, and then the
you go
prisoner's
the
reaction
Starkville
to it.
City jail.
It's just, this is a
They
delightful
threw me
song.
in the car and started driving into town. I said, what the hell did I do? And he said, shut up and sit down. Well, they emptied out my pockets, took my pills and guitar picks. I said, wait, my name is All Shut Up. Well, I sure was in a fix. The sergeant put me in a cell, then he went home for the night. I said, come back here, you so-and-so. I ain't being treated right. Well, they bound to get you, 'cause they got a curfew. And you go to the Starkville City Jail.
Yes, I love this song as like a preteen.
And now and then I'd yell.
I think Johnny Cash, you could hear him, the phone book, and it'd be interesting just with his voice, but he has a great way of storying.
He has that way, right? He's got that voice, and, you can belittle Johnny Cash and say that Johnny Cash, he's saying all the notes, the high one and the low one. And I was just thinking recently, it's like, how would it sound if Johnny Cash, in that manner, the way he's kind of that storytelling that he does in the Starkville City Jail, or kind of just his patter, if he did like Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald or some song like that in that way, it'd be very interesting.
Well, I'm glad you're teaching me about Outlaw Country, because I always say I know two country songs. I know Johnny Cash and not Johnny Cash when I hear them. So that's the two country songs I know.
You can never go wrong if you're like, oh, I country music sucks. I hate country music. You can never go wrong if you'd put on Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, or Willie Nelson.
There you go. I like it. So here we are, Brian. We started with disco and Outlaw Country. Where can we go from here? Those are diametrically opposed. They're so different. Well, let's get whiplash again here, because I'm going to go with
So you think you hate 80s rap?
this song I have. It's from 1982. It's The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Now, when Grandmaster Flash, when he was younger, he started out with the twin turntables. So this is really basically the first song that has that looping sound with the twin turntables. When we think of a DJ, we think of them doing the double turntables, and it had to start somewhere, and it kind of started right here. And this also has a little bit of beatboxing in it. And one thing I know, when people think, oh, rap, that's all braggadocious. All they do is brag. Listen to these lines. Do you think this guy's bragging, or do you think he's talking about how horrible his life is? So there's the turntables, the repeated.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about looping in one of my songs, too, which will be interesting. And actually listen to the bass line at that repeating of the bass line. That also ties into the next song I'm talking about.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
One of the most famous lines.
Yeah. Well, like most things, music begins as a way to kind of express your feelings in the blues, and then it goes into how do I pick up girls.
Just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise, got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley.
Well, listen to how much this kind of ties into the mindset of like Eminem's Lose Yourself.
Don't push me,
Yep.
'cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars go by, roaring as the breeze.
And I like how you get that little beatbox. Nobody beatboxes anymore. He gets that little, I think that was the first beatbox in there, too.
Yeah, not unless it's an a cappella group.
Yeah. Before that, like we said, it was just the Sugar Hill Gang with Rapper's Delight. It was kind of like rapping was about bragging, and it still is to this day to some point. But this song was kind of, it brought in the first social commentary in this song. And this is a song, I've been listening to a bunch of our friends do podcast, a nostalgia podcast, and they talk about 80s rap, and they kind of skip over this song. This song was rated by Rolling Stone magazine as the #1 hip-hop song of all time. Hip-hop and rap, the most important hip-hop and rap song of all time. I couldn't agree more. And not only that, they made it the #5 song of all time. Just, rock, whatever, popular song of all time. And I couldn't agree more. This song is so important, and it's like they don't play it anymore, and I think people don't know about it.
Yep. It's lost in the noise of everything else.
Yeah, you couldn't have Run DMC with this. And then This group followed this up with White Lines, which is a song that's almost as good. You've all heard White Lines.
Bass. Vision, dreams of passion. And all the while I think of you. A very strange reaction. The more I see, the more I do. Baby.
It's just a legendary song, and I'm glad that Rolling Stone gave it the greatest hip-hop song of all time, the 5th greatest song of all time. And once in college, I wrote a paper because at the time Bob Dylan had the #1 song of all time, like a Rolling Stone. So I compared him to this, wrote some like where Bob Dylan was doing like a rap song. And
Subterranean Homesick Blues is the first rap song, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So I think there is some juxtaposition there. And
I'm on a pavement, thinking about the government. A man in a trench coat, badge out, laid off, says he's got a bad cough, wants to get it paid off. Look out, kid, it's something you did. God knows when, but you're doing it again. You better duck down the alleyway, looking for a new friend. A man in a coonskin cap and a pig pen wants $11 bills. You only got 10.
What do you think is the most overly ridiculed music? Do you think it's disco, or is it outlaw country, or is it jazz? Is brought to you by the Or Is It podcast.
You thought you understood the movie, but something's still watching.
At the Or Is It Movie podcast, we uncover hidden meanings, buried clues, and truths that refuse to stay dead.
When the story you were told isn't the whole truth, we find the real story behind the story.
The Or Is It Movie podcast. Listen, if you dare.
And I got an A on the paper. My English teacher loved it, so he loved me bringing in the Bob Dylan into the rap.
So you take the Bob Dylan, all those protest songs, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young with Ohio. You take all of those songs and lyrics and sensibilities, you run it through the disco era.
Yeah.
And then you get political commentary set to a dance beat, and then that's 80s rap. Is that what you're trying to say?
You are correct, sir. Yes!
Yeah, this is all tying together, Brian. That's very good. This is coming right out of the disco era, and you can kind of see it evolving into more serious songs than those fun Bee Gees songs we were playing at the first time.
Well, and isn't rap kind of just taken off of like reading and poetry or something like that? Or you were just like having a rap session? You're just basically talking in a melodic, rhythmic way. I have a name for you. I'm trying to see if you remember. If I said Cotel Cooper, what does that say to you? Does that you have any
familiar.
recollection? Yeah, he was a kid that played basketball with us, and he would freestyle rap on our bus trips when we'd go to play in like Farmington or Apple Valley or
yeah. And I remember when this song came out, 60 Minutes did a story on it about how the young school kids in the inner city could they would memorize the whole song and they could sing the whole, the song is like 8 minutes long and they could memorize every word. So it just, a very important song culturally. And I think we see how everything's evolving. And I wish this song would get played. Nobody listens to it anymore. And I think it's the most important rap song ever.
Is there an oldies rap like stations out there or even on the satellite radio, or is it just everything's pushed new in the hip hop and rap field? Is it we don't care about yesterday? We're not we're not doing the best of the 70s, 80s and today, which is what KS95 said in the 1990s.
Yeah. I think some people kind of listen to Run DMC and the Beastie Boys. You kind of hear them, and I think Dr. Dre, his early songs are still kind of hanging around. But rap, you're right. Rap kind of is on to the next thing. They don't really honor their history as much as some of the other genres do. So, all right, we got it all mixed up right now, Brian. What are you going to hit us with now?
Well, one last thing is it's that oratory styling. Like we lost Jesse Jackson recently, the preacher and politician, civil rights activist, and he had that speaking style that very easily could have been set to music that brings that. So you're just finding a creative way to get your thoughts out to make it more memorable and last. And you can say that early 80s rap was born out of that as well.
So you think you hate jazz?
I mentioned looping, and I've talked about Miles Davis in the past, and so my next song is jazz. Right? Everyone likes to dump on jazz. Jazz is a 4-letter word, jazz. In Talladega Nights, they have jazz on the jukebox so that they can profile people. Jazz is not that bad. Jazz is these things that we've been talking about, expressing yourself, but it's mostly through instrumental, and it allows you to interpret your own way. And so you can put on a song and listen to it, and then 5 months later listen to it again, and it's going to give you it's going to evoke different feelings in you, which is perfectly okay. So I wanted to go something that was in the 70s. I barely made it, and it was Miles Davis. Miles Davis' probably most famous work, and the one that I listened to the most, is 1959's Kind of Blue, but I wasn't born yet. So 1970, he had the album Bitches Brew, and on that he has Miles Runs the Voodoo Down. He hates the title, but it's got a looping bass track and then different instruments over the top. It's one of the first electric piano songs. Chick Corea plays electric piano on it. Miles kind of lets loose. Miles was an understated jazz player, right? He'd play in between the notes you'd think he was expecting, but they played with the looping of the bass through this. It's one of the first recordings where they kind of would loop the bass around, and it seems to be then a springboard for other genres, including the rap with the twin turntables. Miles Davis is famous for kind of reinventing music a couple different times. There was the birth of the cool jazz, the West Coast jazz, which is what the Charlie Brown Christmas album was classified under, as West Coast cool jazz. And then this kind of the beginning of like fusion, jazz fusion, where they bring in a little rock and roll. Like John McLaughlin plays guitar on this. So you get that electric piano, you get the guitar, you've got the trumpet, and then you've got that fantastic repeating bass line underneath, which goes to the song you just shared, had that fantastic repeating bass line underneath.
Yeah, this is good stuff here.
Yeah.
This is just, I like the improvisational sound of it, like you said, but then it does have the looping with it.
You're just playing over the top of this, and wherever it takes you. And in live, it's never repeated. It's something different. Jazz, to me, can kind of be like curling. At first, you look at it and you're like, well, this is stupid. You hear jazz, this is just a bunch of noise. And then if it's Dixieland jazz, that's like regular jazz, except everyone solos at the same time in Dixieland jazz. Then you listen for a while and you start to pick up you get into it, you let it permeate into you, and then it's speaking to you, and you don't need lyrics to have music make you feel good. And that's my 2 cents on give jazz a listen. Not a bad spot to start off with Bitches Brew with Miles Davis. Eventually you'll get back to Kind of Blue, which I think is still the masterpiece of jazz, with Cannonball Adderley and John Coltrane on it as well, playing horn.
Oh, yeah, John Coltrane's amazing also. So, yeah, jazz, I saw something on the other day. They were saying, like, 60s jazz sucks, 70s jazz. So they were kind of going off on it, 70s jazz, 80s jazz, and they had every decade sucks, but... So I don't know why jazz is like the disco. It gets the bad name. I'm not sure why, because there's some just amazing, Miles Davis, Coltrane. You can't go wrong with those.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate Death Dave's 1984, a video podcast that will take you through the greatest pop culture year we have ever seen.
Wax on.
My fellow Americans,
Wax off.
I am a candidate and will seek re-election.
From movies, music, sports, comics, television, and more, this show will be a chronological journey through every aspect of the year. So who's going to drive you home and not let the glory days pass you by? Death Dave's 1984. It's a hard habit to break, but time after time, I'll show you why 1984 was the best year ever. So who you going to call? Available now. Subscribe and follow today. I'll be back.
All right, Wolfman Mike. So we've talked a few songs. We threw this out to our listening audience. We threw out the whatever the equivalent of the bat signal is for the 70s versus 80s podcast of, hey, we're talking about old stuff, and we really appreciate your guys' podcasts, and can you please give us some material so that we can pad ours out? So Brad from Pop Culture Yearbook, he was happy to share some songs, but he just basically took the whole premise of, you don't like this certain group, and he gives us a song. And so I wanted to read a couple of these out. So Brad starts out with, "So you think you hate U2? Try God, part 2. So you think you hate REM? Try Night Swimming.
That's an amazing song.
So you think you hate the Eagles, man? Man, I've had a rough night. I don't hate the Eagles. I just think they're overrated. Those two things can exist." But he says, "Try Peaceful, Easy Feeling," which might be the Eagles' second best song after Seven Bridges Road. I'll let our listeners debate. So you think you hate Coldplay? Try Guns. So you think you hate the Oak Ridge Boys? Try Leaving Louisiana in the Broad Daylight, which was written by Rodney Crowell, who was in Emmylou Harris's Hot Band, and Emmylou Harris also does a really good version of it. I'd also rather look at Emmylou Harris singing than the Oak Ridge Boys singing. And I know that's just a personal feeling on my part, but I'll stand by that.
All right.
So you think you hate Creed? You're right. They fucking suck. Thank you, Brad. You're amazing.
You got that. All right, Brad. That was awesome. That was... Yeah, well, we'll have to have Brad back on sometimes in the Pop Culture Yearbook, guys. I know Brad's a huge REM U2, so he's going to have to bring us talk of some U2 with us, because I know your audience isn't going to get much of it out of me or you, Brian.
No, they aren't. He's one of those younger listeners that we're trying to preach the gospel of the older music to. He's got the new younger stuff because he's half a decade younger than us.
So thank you, Brad, for filing that report. And he's not the only one that filed a report. We got our East Coast contributor, Gasper. It's been a little while since we heard from him. And this is a really interesting one. This one's it's a couple minutes long here. You got to listen to it. It's about something that we talk about all the time on here, Brian, and it kind of fits into today's show. So Gasper's talking about, so you think you hate...
Cher's husbands? Oh, okay.
So you think you hate Cher's husbands? Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
That's what we talk about a lot. No, go ahead.
No, so he's saying, so you think you hate Metallica, and he's saying if you're talking about the newer Metallica, he's saying you're right, but he's talking about how they changed from the old to new, and he brings a good point here. So let's listen to Gasper, the Unified Scene's very own King of Queens from Queens, New York, and here's what he's got to say about Metallica.
Hey, Mike and Brian, it's Gasper from the Hood Rat Recap Podcast. You guys put out a call for bands that most people think they hate, but we may like, and I guess this was an opportunity to make that argument. So I have a band like that as a kid, I was definitely on that side of the argument, and it is kind of transposed as an adult, and now I'm on the other side of the argument. So let me lay it out for you. Metallica.
Bass solo, take one.
When I was a kid, Metallica was everything. This is a band that formed in 1981. I didn't get on board until 1986 when I was 13. At the time, it was the Master of Puppets record, but I went back and dove in deep. Metallica kind of became almost like a religion for me at the time. It was so sonically different from anything that I was hearing, especially on the radio. But even what my friends were listening to at the time was Bon Jovi and Poison and Cinderella and all these hair metal bands that like I just despised. It seemed so commercial and cheap, except for Rat. Rat's an exception. Invasion of Your Privacy. We'll talk about that record cover one day. But Metallica comes out, hits the scene, and gains popularity, and rightfully so, because they're putting out these honest, like hard-hitting records and just coming from left field. I just immediately fell in love with them. The album Kill 'Em All, their first record, really felt like it laid out some promises to the listeners, that this was a band that wasn't about the ultra commercial, makeup and flash experience. It was about the music, and they really earnestly meant what they were putting out there. I mean, if you go back and look through some of those lyrics, that it's in there. To me at the time, felt like we're not just a carbon copy of one of these other hair metal bands that are out there and making all this money. And it was unpopular at the time. They were not played on the radio. They were not seen as like acceptable by the mainstream. It's undeniable that they later grew huge in popularity. In 1989, they were nominated for Best Heavy Metal Record, which at the time was a brand new category. And this was a first, and they were the pioneers into that, and it was exciting watching that. And that was a great record. Unfortunately, they lost to Jethro Tull, who put out Crest of a Knave, which I think we've talked about that before. I was torn as a kid because I was also a huge Jethro Tull fan. But the point is that they were at the height of their career, and they were becoming titans in an industry that was just forming. Heavy metal was really just being accepted. And around the same time, they put out the One video, which to me changed videos. Everyone was putting out these, like, here's the girl, here's the car, here's the band videos. And One was like this cinematic experience. And it really kind of changed what MTV was doing at the time and what other bands were doing at the time. And then they put out the Black Record in 1991. And a lot of people cried foul because they were like, oh, this is more melodic, it's slower, it's not the thrashy heavy metal that we're used to. And I felt like, you know what? This is, at the time, that's a band that's been around for 10 years, and bands change. And I understand that bands change. And I wanted to make that point because I'm going to counteract that point shortly. But the difference between Black and everything that came later was that Black was still an honest record. It was about the musicianship. It was about, they were still being Metallica. They were still being what they always promised to be. It was just more melodic because they were older. And that record was a monster. I mean, the album originally peaked on the Billboard at number 1 in August of 1991. And it currently still sits on the Billboard Top 200 at 162. 34 years later. I mean, that's insane. And then in 1996, they put out the Load record. And they got together with Bob Rock, who was famous for producing bands like Bon Jovi and Motley Crue. And you immediately heard how they just became another hair metal band. It was just another, like, party rock band. And I never understood that, and it felt like a betrayal. I mean, this is a band that was at the top of their game. And why you would then put out this sellout commercial rock record just destroyed me. So that's my rant on Metallica, for what it's worth. And thanks for the question, man. Talk to you later. Bye.
A couple of interesting points that Gasper brought up there. We'd like to thank you, Gasper, for bringing that to us. It kind of reminded me, I think people should go back and listen to our Replacements and Bill Withers episode when we were doing our summer listening series. Was that like 2 summers ago now? That was a while back ago. But we talked about that with the Replacements, how they started out as kind of like garage punk, and radio couldn't play them. They were really hard to listen to. They were garage punk. And then later in their career, they went to like adult album rock, adult alternative, and they sounded more like Matchbox 20 and the Goo Goo Dolls. But like they had 2 albums in transition, Let It Be and Tim, where they're transitioning between, and those just a perfect window of opportunity. And those 2 albums are just amazing. I like all their albums, the Replacements. So then Gasper's talking about Metallica here. And it's very interesting, when they first came out, radio could do nothing with them. They were just so sonically hard. And he takes my one joke. I always had that joke. I like their, people go, do you like Metallica? And I go, I like their one song. One, I like the song One, so I always do that joke. I like their one song. And that was a great video too. It was like very cinematic. But then 1991's The Black Album, when they kind of went more commercial, that comes out with Enter Sandman. And the reason everybody calls it the Black Album is it's a little, I don't know if it's like a ode to Spinal Tap, but it's, if you look this album up on Apple or Spotify, I think they call it Metallica. They just call it Metallica plain, because it was just a black square. There was no title or anything. So all us cool kids on the street call it the Black Album.
Yeah. Well, it's you could also tie it to the Beatles' White Album, that this is, they're the exact opposite of the Beatles. Where white is no light at all, and black is all light combined. And so like the Beatles is nothing heavy, and Metallica is kind of like Dixieland heavy metal, where everyone's soloing at the same time, heavy. Gasper always brings different like layers of themes to it, which, surprising coming from a guy like Gasper. Anyways, no, this is, I have to, every time I compliment someone, I have to also cut them down. But Gasper brings up these points as this is evolving, and it made me think. There's a boxer, and I can't remember who it was. One of the local radio talk show hosts brings this up often, and it is when you start to get successful, how it tough to stay true to yourself and to do the hard work that got you there. And the boxer said, it's tough to get up at 5 a.m. to go out and do road work, like you're jogging, you're doing cardio so that you can last a 12-round fight. It's hard to get up at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets.
Yeah.
And it's like you get some success and you start to want to enjoy the fruit of your success, of the fruits of your labor, that you don't put in the work you used to, or you get away from what you are and you take the shortcuts. And so the sellout, the producer of Bon Jovi and everything doing a Metallica record points to that. It's like, we're just going to take the easy way out because it's tough to get up at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets.
And in this Black album from 1991, it is just like a snapshot. Like I said, they were going from the hard stuff where radio wouldn't touch them. And then their next albums were going to be too radio friendly. As you hear, Gasper didn't like them. He thought, and I know a lot of people hate Load and Reload, but then you get this Black album right in the middle, that has Enter Sandman, and that's legitimately an amazing song. They're going to be playing that song 50, 100 years from now. It's got Sad But True on it, Wherever I May Roam, Nothing Else Matters. So it does have some big radio hits on it, and I think it's just an interesting snapshot. Like I said, it's kind of like the Replacements when they're going from one side to the other, and they get kind of a snapshot right in the middle where everything clicks, and I think it was a really popular album. And so, yeah, I'd like to thank Gasper for saying, if you think you hate Metallica, you're right if you're talking about their later stuff. And we're putting all these songs today we're going to do a Spotify and Apple playlist. So maybe I'll put one by Metallica and then Enter Sandman, and you can kind of listen to both and kind of see pre-commercial and then after commercial and kind of compare the two together. You ever hear a song and think, this rules, but I feel like I just walked into the middle of a conversation?
Yeah, like you missed 3 backstories, 2 nicknames, and a very important night in Minneapolis.
That's the Hold Steady, and this is the Hood Rat Recap Podcast.
We're a podcast where longtime fans break down the songs, the shows, the characters.
And the moments that make you say, wow, that lyric just described my friend from 2007.
But you don't have to know the band to listen.
If you're deep in the unified scene, welcome home.
If you've never heard the Hold Steady before, we'll catch you up. No homework, no gatekeeping.
Come hang out with us, and we'll introduce you to the best community we have ever known, the unified scene.
There's something here for everyone. Great rock songs,
questionable decisions,
and way too much thought put into all of it.
We would love for you to be part of it.
That's Kevin, that's Mike, and I'm Gasper. And us guys, and all you guys and gals, we are all the Hood Rat Recap.
You bring up, this is a point you just kind of brought up or alluded to that applies to other parts of life. If you ever been exposed to something and you think, why was this so popular? Why are people so into this? And it's because you just know it in its current state, and you haven't done that deep dive to look back and see, oh, this is the origin story. This is where they came from. This is fantastic. Now I get why people are big fans of them. It's not because of what they did now. No one's a fan of the Allman Brothers because of their like Hell or High Water album that was on Arista in like 1981. No, it's because of the first 3 fantastic albums.
All right. So speaking of Allman Brothers, why don't you I know we're going to kind of go out of order here. Why don't you do your pick next? Because my category is going to kind of break the board when I do it. So
okay, perfect. We'll save the board breaker for the end.
So you think you hate Southern rock?
It originally was going to be like, so you hate Southern rock. And Southern rock is, you could really associate Southern rock with probably Lynyrd Skynyrd most. Allman Brothers were more jazz, country. They've been called, I think Tom Dowd, the legendary producer, called them, they were a blues band playing rock and roll like a jazz band. And that's where you get all that depth and interplay. And they have the extra instrumentation, the two drummers and everything. So this is more, instead of a Southern rock, this is more, Spunky Comstock, you talk a lot about the Allman Brothers, but I don't think I'm ready to jump into the deep end. I can't listen to a 13-minute Liz Reed or a 21-minute Whipping Post. I need to start out with something shorter and more, more of an introduction. And then I also thought some of these bands, right, we talked about the deeper cuts on the albums. Idlewild South came out in September of 1970. It actually came out 25 years before I got married, to the exact date. So it came out September 23rd of 1970. The gems from that are Midnight Rider and In Memory of Elizabeth Reed. And In Memory of Elizabeth Reed became one of the concert staples. They would stretch it out. It was already almost 7-minute song on the album. And they'd stretch it out on their final concert. They essentially do a 28-minute version of Liz Reed. And so when you're looking back 50-some years later, because I guess 1970 was more than 50 years ago, and the songs you think of from that album are Midnight Rider and Liz Reed. But there are other songs on there that are kind of a great snapshot of what the band was doing that you didn't pay attention to because these other two overshadowed it. It's like when you run into someone from high school later, if of the opposite gender, and you're like, you didn't remember them being hot in high school, but they're hot now, and it's like you just, because you were being overshadowed by other people. And so there's the last two songs that close out are Please Call Home and Leave My Blues at Home. And you can tell this is a young songwriter, Greg Allman, who is in his early 20s and struggling with the life on the road of being a musician. And Please Call Home kind of has a little bit of piano in it. It then turns into like a up speed guitar going back. You got a little bit of funky bass from Barry Oakley. And it's just a good launching point of a song that no one will ever hear on the radio, but to bring you into the Allman Brothers so that you can then go into the deep end and drop a needle in Whipping Post and be like, now I get why the hubbub. Now I get what Spunky Comstock's talking about.
Yeah, and you'd be proud of me. I was blasting a lot of Allman Brothers the other day, and then my girlfriend said, well, "So wait, the singer's a white guy?" And I said, "Yeah, she's married to Cher. He was married to Cher. He's got longer blonde hair than she had hair." Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they tried to launch as an integrated band out of the Deep South in 1969, and so that takes dedication to the music to have to stop at the road. And when you see that they won't allow black people to eat with you, you just pack everyone back up in the Winnebago and go on to the next place, because you're not going to leave a brother behind. And as an integrated band in the Deep South in the late 60s, there's stories out there.
Yeah, and I said, I think their band having that wide, they just had such a wide sound because they're such a multicultural band there, and you can really hear it in their music. So they can kind of go in any direction.
I got into the Allman Brothers young, and then you do other stuff, and like everyone talks Led Zeppelin and things like that. And you listen to Led Zeppelin, and Led Zeppelin's essentially a power trio with a vocalist. And Led Zeppelin has great songs, and they're wonderful musicians. You could argue that any of them are a better musician than anyone in the Allman Brothers. That Jimmy Page is a better guitar player, John Paul Jones is a better bass player, Robert Plant's got a better voice. But the six together, the double drummers outdoes anything that Bonham does for being one drummer. Greg Allman playing the organ, so he's not just a singer, but that organ, it sustains songs, it helps move songs along, it adds an extra layer. So you listen to headphones, you listen to Zeppelin, and then you listen to the Allman Brothers, and you get there's a lot more going on in an Allman Brothers song that's not part of the fantastic Robert Plant vocals or Jimmy Page's guitar. You got Dwayne and Dickie with guitar, and it just, the sum of it is just, it's like magic happened for those first few albums that you have to appreciate by putting in headphones. One of my favorite things to say, I've never said on this podcast, but I'm going to lay it on you now, is my superpower is that I can listen to jam band music without having to get high and enjoy it.
And so, Brian, I've been waiting to be on air to ask you about this. You sent me a screenshot of your ranking for the Allman Brothers for worldwide ranking on Spotify.
Yes.
Why don't you tell the audience what that ranking was?
So when Spotify Rap came out this year, I was the second. I listened to the Allman Brothers the second most in the entire world. Part of this are two things really spawn that. I put together a playlist. This is the honest truth. It's the studio version of Whipping Post, and then from the July 3rd, 1970 live Whipping Post at the Atlanta International Pop Festival, all the way to the Whipping Post that they would have played as the second to the last song they ever played as a band. and 18 different live versions in between. It's like 5.5 hours. I listened to that on repeat because it's the story of a band. It's the debut, it's the album, it's the early live when they're still kind of figuring out the structure of the song. You can tell when Duane Allman dies because all of a sudden there's no first guitar solo. Greg Allman does Hammond B3 organ in the first solo, and then they add Chuck Leavell, the piano player, so then there's a piano solo. And then when they added Warren Haynes, they went back to the 2-guitar, telling of it, and then at the end with Derek and Warren at guitar and O'Teal Burbridge is the bass player. It's almost, the last versions it's almost like a symphony where there's movements and you can tell, and it's like they've got this down, but it's a moving song because there's so much going on in it. Watch the YouTube video from Rounder Records, the All My Friends Greg Allman version of Whipping Post. It's just fantastic. And you get the visual of it because you don't get the visual of the early Allman Brothers. There's a September of 1970, they did a show at Fillmore East that PBS was broadcasting, or they taped to put together broadcast. They never released it, but there's some footage from it. But it's not the same as the 1971 from the album, and then it's not the same as the later years. Everyone's a little different, and you can hear the evolution of the band. And then I listened to the last album, the last concert, the final concert. It's a 3-set show, and with a double encore. And I listened to that a bunch. And so I listened to probably almost 100,000 minutes of Allman Brothers, most of it, these two playlists.
And so what we got to do is maybe the guy that was number one is listening, because we got to get him on the show.
Yes. We have to see
who beat that. I don't know if I want to meet this guy.
What kind of deranged individual listened to it more than me? And it's not Greg and Dwayne's mother, because she passed, I think, in 2015.
No, but seriously, number two, I remember one time I was giving gas he was like number 38 for the Hold Steady. And in newsflash, the Hold Steady's not as famous as the Allman Brothers, probably. And I thought he was a big deal at number 38, but you're number two for one of the biggest bands in the world there. That's just, and I think we'll say the whole galaxy.
Super influential band.
The whole galaxy, because I don't think anybody on Jupiter or Saturn listens to that.
No,
much.
Probably not. I'm going to do a couple fact things, because my wife and I used to share our Spotify, and it was dominated by me, and then she started listening to it, so then we got the duo, and then I had to restart over, so then all my stats and playlists were always on her thing. But she was listening to Bruno Mars. So we always talk about monthly listeners on Spotify, and so the Allman Brothers have 3.2 million, and again, last album was 2003. The last tour was 2014. So, I mean, it's been that year. And then a lot of the Allman Brothers prime listeners are older than me, and they may not be streaming. So that's okay. 3.2 million monthly listeners. That's not that too bad. So then she has Bruno Mars on. So I'm like, well, I'm going to look at Bruno Mars. How many monthly listeners does Bruno Mars have? And it's 131.1 million.
Jesus.
I'm like, what the fuck?
For his 1.5 songs?
for his 1.5 song.
Yeah, I don't understand how those numbers work. They're just crazy. They're just nuts.
I don't either.
So for my final selection is, speaking about small numbers, this guy's going to kind of have small numbers. So I'm going to I said I was going to kind of break the board here. This one's kind of oddly specific. My last one is...
So you think you hate singer-songwriters who inspired Heath Ledger to play the Joker on Dark Knight Returns? Is this some kind of joke? What the hell kind of oddly specific song category is that?
That is oddly specific.
That's oddly specific, very oddly specific. So here's this rumor going around YouTube right now where they think this interview with Tom Waits, so I'm going to play it for you. They think it inspired Heath Ledger to play the Joker. So I'm going to play this interview for you. It is Tom Waits. It's not the Joker. It's not Heath Ledger. So let's listen to it and see what they're talking about.
I have a growing level of popularity throughout the intercontinental United States, Japan, and I travel extensively in Europe as well. I'm also big in Philadelphia.
Excuse me.
I feel like I'm at my grandmother's.
So that was Tom Waits giving an interview, and there's this big rumor going around. I don't know if it's been true. Like after Heath Ledger died, he had a movie came out. Tom Waits was in the movie with him, so they did know each other. But so does that make you think of the Joker from Heath Ledger's Joker?
Do I really look like a guy with a plan? You know what I am? I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. You know, I just do things.
Oh, yes, the patter, the pacing, the timing, the
that voice. How do you get that voice?
Way that the vocal comes out, the voice, right? It's like Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman combined. Oh, it could completely be an homage when you're trying to think of, to try to not use your own voice when you're an actor. I got to think that you use some stuff to do mindset. So it's like if he's a Tom Waits fan and you just try to mimic Tom Waits' vocal style, or that combined with your own will be something that's not heard, and then it can be unique, and then you can keep it for that character, as opposed to then you're like every character sounds the same.
So I'm going to play a Tom Waits song. He's another guy. You're going to hear it and you're going to say, yeah, radio. You know, NPR loves him. He's a darling of NPR, but he doesn't fit on commercial radio at all. This is a guy I just think, I think a lot of people, I know Gasper hates this guy, but I think a lot of people hate this guy. I know you don't really like him, Brian, but I'm just going to play this song. This song's called Tom Trobert's Blues, 4 Sheets to the Wind in Copenhagen. So that's the full title. It's almost as long as a snippet here, so let's give him a listen here.
Yeah.
Wasted and wounded, it ain't what the moon did. God, would I paid for now? See you tomorrow, if Frank can I borrow a couple of bucks from you to go waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you go waltzing Matilda with me.
So, and Rod Stewart's got a version of this. That this song did not chart, but Rod Stewart's song did chart. And Rod Stewart has a tradition. Rod Stewart also has Downtown Train was a big hit for Rod Stewart. That was also a Tom Waits song, written song and performed song. He never hits the charts, but Rod Stewart takes a couple of, like 2 or 3 of his songs and is charted with them. So
yeah. So there is a big world out there, as you said, the intercontinental United States and Japan and everything, and Philadelphia. These singer-songwriters or these great lyricists, we've talked a lot about them. We've talked, Gordon Lightfoot's the Canadian version. Willie Nelson's the Texas version, Jimmy Buffett's the Caribbean, white person reggae version. You got Bob Dylan's the protest version, and you get the Tom Waits. I always think of Tom Waits along the same lines like John Prine. It's kind of Americana. It's about the story. He's telling the story through his voice, same as going all the way back to the beginning of the episode of the 80s rap telling their story in their own method. And so he's kind of overlooked, but he is a gem. He has those songs are heartfelt and true to speak to people. I know that early Government Mule did Tom Waits Going Out West as their encore often. So you could add that to the playlist.
All right.
Off of the Georgia bootleg box. There's some funky music on that, but there's Going Out West, so you can add that as a Tom Waits song done in a quote unquote Southern rock, although Government Mule at the beginning was more of a tip to the power trios of like James Gang and Jimi Hendrix Experience. And I think he has 1.1 million monthly Spotify, 1.4 million. So he's obscure, but he's not Floyd Pepper being picked first in the Muppet fantasy draft level of obscure or out of left field. You have to be under $1 million for that.
And remember, I had that faux pas back when we did the Muppets sound like. I said he sounded like Fozzie Bear. You guys said I was wrong. You said I should have said he sounded like Ralph the dog.
Ralph the dog is he's the piano player, and then it's Something Better comes along in the Muppet movie. He sings with Kermit. But it's a little slower and deeper than Ralph the dog, but closer than Fozzie Bear. Yeah,
I guess Heath Ledger was what we should have gone with. The Joker.
But you could imagine him fronting on some songs, fronting the Electric Mayhem.
He'd be all in on it.
Tom Waits.
So we got a very eclectic list. Like I said, we're going to have this on the playlist, the Spotify and Apple playlist. You can click on in the show notes. You're obviously not going to remember the title of that song, so you can go on there and find it if you want to listen to more of it. And I'll put the Rod Stewart version of some of the Tom Waits song. We'll put the Government Mules version.
Going Out West.
We'll put out 2 different eras of Metallica on there. What should we put on from Brad? I don't think I want to put on Coldplay.
No.
We'll put on Night Swimming by R.E.M. because that's just a phenomenal song. That's a great song, yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to put on anything by the Eagles.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow babies. This episode was produced by Spunky and Wolfman. Those 2 dudes were produced by learning to beatbox in the communal shower that every high school locker room seemed to have in the 1980s. Leave us a voicemail on the link in the show notes, and you will hear yourself on the next episode. This podcast was brought to you by Secret Suburb Studio.
I like eating steak, but I don't think they should close down all the Burger Kings.
Again, I listened to the Allman Brothers the second most in the entire world.
Married to Cher. He was married to Cher. He's got longer blonde hair than she had hair, yeah.
Gonna take it from the bottom and straight to the top. So check it out, party people. It's the human beatbox.
Man, come on. I had a rough night and I hate the fucking Eagles, man.